You're listening to Changing Reality. Changing Reality, where we bend reality all across the world. Only on WQHS Radio. So hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Changing Reality. So welcome one, welcome all. Hopefully you guys have been having a great week. If not, let us know how you've been in the comments below. So if this is your first time watching the show, where have you been all our lives? This is the place to be. But for all of you new viewers, Changing Reality is a show that features phenomenal people from all walks of life, who are in essence changing their own reality. So we'll be hanging out and interviewing with all kinds of people, from social change makers, entrepreneurs, business leaders, to even artists, musicians, and inspiring individuals from all across the world, and many of whom here from the Penn campus in a way, to hear their inspiring stories on how they not only changed the world for themselves, but how those ripple effects have affected those around them and made waves in the lives of others. So I wanted to do this show simply because I believe that there are so many people out there who do phenomenal things and make waves in the lives of those around them. And I'm passionate about uncovering these stories and learning how it is they've done that, so that hopefully we'd be able to pick out the little nuggets of wisdom in those stories that will shape our own lives and will show us the paths that we are meant to live as well. And as a testament to how much I believe in the power that these stories actually have and hold, I actually founded and run a youth movement back home called Ascendance, back home in Malaysia, where I'm from, that collaborates today with not only our Malaysian Ministry of Education, but works with over 28 countries to help provide an alternative education platform for any student who wants to change their reality. So we work with students from elementary all the way up to high school through various sessions, programs, experiential learning activities, and projects that help them discover what they love doing, what they're passionate about, learn about themselves and the world around them, and start their own careers while they're still in school that creates meaningful impact not just for themselves, but for those around them as well. And to date, we've been fortunate to work with over 35,000 students in over 900 communities and have helped everyday students and incubate their own student-run projects and social enterprises run by students aged 8 to 25 years old. And why we've able to be doing all of this is very simple. It's because of kind individuals who've been willing to take their time, share their experience, their stories, their expertise to provide insight and kind of shorten the learning curve of the people that we work with. And just like that, I hope that this show is that same platform for all of you out there who are trying to learn more about an industry, who are trying to learn more about where life is headed for you in a sense, and maybe are not so sure where to go. Hopefully, this is the show that gives you that insight that you need to actually chart your own course and see where and how you can change your own reality. So with that, we'll move into our episode for today. Today we have someone who is personally so inspiring. She's a Penn alum herself, but at the same time, someone who's created so much, I would say, impact on the film industry. She's a veteran broadcast and cable television executive who has held the post of director at so many top companies that you would not even believe. From leaving her mark at places such as CBS to Lorimar to many others that are today great broadcasting giants, we have this phenomenal executive who's going to share with us a little bit about her story of how, from a student at Penn, she went out there to take the world of film and TV by storm. So without further ado, let's welcome Joan Harrison, our phenomenal guest speaker, to today's session. Hello.
Good morning. You made my day, and it's only 7 a.m. So
I am so sorry about scheduling this so early for you.
I'm in Los Angeles, where we are early risers. We wake up early and we go to bed early. So that's how it is out here. All good.
I really appreciate that, and I do appreciate you joining in for the show. I personally am someone who hates the early mornings, so the fact that you're here and already so poised and ready to share your story is remarkable and amazing, and I can only hope to and aspire to wake up as early as you one day for a chat like this.
Well, as we get older, especially once I left Penn, you join the working world and it's like, wow, I can't sleep late anymore. So you get used to it.
So we're the culprit. So it's just the Penn atmosphere that makes you stay up all night and sleep all day. as I'm hearing it.
I don't know if I slept all day. I stayed pretty busy, but yeah, no, look, college students need a lot of sleep. So that's a big difference.
We'll take that as your seal of approval for all of us sleeping until noon from now on. But thank you so much. And interestingly enough, you are someone who, and I did mention this in your introduction, but a really fun fact that I personally thought was amazing was that you actually founded one of the main, I would say, entertainment clubs here at Penn. We have the founder of Bloomers Comedy with us here today. So you actually were one of the people who pioneered it, and I personally cannot imagine them not existing at all. So it's amazing to think that you pioneered not just, I would say, comedy in one aspect, but you pioneered an entire generation of people who probably didn't even know that comedy was their thing, to help discover their interest in it at the very least, and have a space where they could try it on campus. So first of all, thank you for keeping us entertained and for keeping us amazed in a sense. Did you always know that comedy and even the world of film broadly was the thing that you wanted to go into, or was it just a shocking, I don't know, experience at Penn that made you pivot into it? How were you like when you first came to Penn, really?
Yeah. I think it was more the latter. Look, like so many high school students, I was very involved in drama and performing. I also grew up outside of New York City, and I had a passion for theater, and I saw, at the time, Broadway was very affordable, and I saw every show that opened. But I figured I would go to law school, and it wasn't until I founded Bloomers, which was kind of groundbreaking in that it was the first female performing arts group in the Ivy League, that I realized, wow, I really like putting together a performance and a production and a project that really feeds my soul. And so I started working in local television in Philadelphia. I had 2 really good internships, and I pivoted away from the law school plan and decided theater wasn't as viable as on-screen media, be it film or television. So that was sort of the thinking process at the time.
No, amazing. I know many lawyers who probably miss their calling, so we should send them all for more shows while they are in campus. No, I'm serious. I feel like lawyers are some of the most hilarious people that I know. I think it's just the crowd at Penn, So definitely, I'm grateful for the show that you visited. There's this story that I read about you in I think one of Penn's articles, where you actually went for this show and you thought, hey, you know what? I would like to try this out, and you applied for the then all male comedy group in a sense, and they said no, or they said no to other amazing talented women like you in a way, and then you decided to form your own club. Tell us that story in a sense, and how did it feel at that point of time, wanting to get into something but not knowing what channel or what groups?
Yeah, when I got to Penn, I had trouble finding my posse, and I think a lot of college students feel that way, right? And at the time, Penn was only 1/3 female. It was a really different place, and it felt very old school Ivy League. And I was a full scholarship kid. It was also felt very money, and I just couldn't find my people. And then I went to see this comedy show that Mask and Wig, which was this 100-year-old male group, put on, and it was brilliant. I still remember it. It was a revelation. And I thought, wow, I would really like to do that. And so I explored auditioning for them, and it said in their charter they would rather disband than admit a women.
What?
Well, I think that's different. They changed the charter because this year they found that in September they're going to begin admitting women. But I figured, okay, I don't want to join a club that doesn't want me. So I thought about just starting a women's group, and there weren't women's groups at the time at Penn. And so social media back then was handing out flyers on Locust Walk, the main thoroughfare campus. And 200 women showed up to that first meeting, and I realized, whoa, I'm not the only one feeling a need to connect. And when I remember I stood up, I said, now is the time for the first female comedy group in the Ivy League. Everybody stood up and cheered. And I thought, okay, now I really have to do this. And anyway, it just got better and better. And it's funny, I've gone back to Penn in the past 5 years when I've had more personal time to establish the Alumni Association of Bloomers. And it's been such a privilege to meet the fierce young women who continue to find their people in this group. You know, I think there's a lot to be said for affinity groups within diverse communities. I mean, even professional organizations have affinity groups for gay employees, for, racial groups. I think those groups are important because we find so much community. We rightly honor who we are. And why not celebrate that and connect? You can join the wider world while honoring your individual attributes. So I think that's important as we go through our careers to remember that our distinct voice brings so much to the chorus. And we don't just want to, yes, we want to blend in, but we don't want to leave what makes us so extraordinary. So it was a great experience, and it continues to be a wonderful experience that gives back to me personally still in meeting the next generation of bloomers and how just incredible they are.
No, that's actually very, very beautifully said, because I feel like many of us are struggling in a way or to find exactly the right space for us, and sometimes that overlaps sex with like a particular group or a particular segment of a larger industry that we're looking at, and sometimes even just the support and the infrastructure in place to support those things are more important than we think of. Yeah,
you bet. And it's not just gender, it's your Malaysian culture, it's my culture. I mean, we all see things through different lens, and it's a beautiful thing when you realize your lens sheds so much insight on somebody else's viewpoint. And that's why companies right now are in this great renaissance of looking for people with differences. I think it's a great thing. I hear many white men in America complain about it because, they feel, a lot of them feel like they're at the short end of the stick right now, but they've had the long end for millennia. So sorry, I'm not all that sympathetic. Sorry if I offended anyone with that, but I do think there's great value in diversity, and it just makes things better.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, and you're definitely one of the reasons we can thank that we all have a little bit more of an equal share of what's going on out there. I actually have a picture from one of your first few performances with Bloomers. Let's see if I can get this up. Can you see? Yeah.
Yes. Gee, the screen just blanked out. Yeah, there it is. Okay. Oh, that's so funny. Yes, this is from the first two shows, and that's in the top left. That's me on Locust Walks after selling out all our shows. And the second picture beneath it, some of these it took famous women. It was a mashup of, say, that's Marilyn Monroe singing about the Monroe Doctrine, and Charlie Brown singing about Brown versus Board of Education, and Carmen Miranda about the Miranda ruling. So we had a lot of fun. We wrote original music, and I have to say some of our comedy was very clever, really cutting edge.
Well, one of the things that I'm very curious about is how do you come up with like whenever I watch a show or something, as you said, it's very clever. It's very well thought out in a sense, and especially with the stories that you kind of told. Just in looking at that one picture, there's obviously a lot of thought and a lot of, I would say, a
Yeah.
dash of wit, a dash of love, a dash of compassion that goes into kind of this whole pot that creates the stage performance that we all enjoy. Do you remember what was the process like for you and your posse at that point of time to come up with something like this, especially when it was your first show, first ever female show? There's a lot of pressure on you guys. How did you even go about finding your voice and finding that structure to it?
Great question. I learned some of the rules of comedy. There are some basic rules, like the rule of...
no, comedy is rules. Joking. Go ahead. Yeah.
There are a few basic ones, like the rule of three, meaning you establish a pattern and then you break it. And then I realized it was putting things out of context. And that was really helpful. I tried to keep the bar high, so it wasn't just about silly wordplay, and I didn't like parodies very much. I wanted original music, and we also got together once a week in my 3-bedroom dorm room in the lower quad. I would make heaps of popcorn, I remember, on my hot plate, and we would just sit there, a bunch of us, just eking out comedy bits. It was really a lot of fun, and I didn't realize at the time, but that's how it's done. That was our writer's room, and that's it. You riff off of each other, and we did have one woman who remains one of my closest friends, and she was a comic genius, and that was really helpful. So she just has a very odd way of looking at the world, and she finds humor in really bizarre things, and it was a lot of fun. So again, diversity, like she saw the world differently, and that was very helpful. So that's how we got started. And we also back then spent the year crafting our show. Now Bloomers does a show every semester, but I felt like we needed to really put our very best foot forward for the first couple of years. And for the first 10 years, I think, Bloomers only did one show a year. So we had the gift of time.
Very well said. And you also mentioned earlier that after kind of this amazing experience throughout college, doing these many different sketches and these shows and these productions, you went on and got these 2 wonderful internships that kind of brought you slowly into the wider film and TV industry. This is a hot topic, I feel, now that we're in the summer and every Penn student is thinking about their internship in either remorse or joy and planning for next year already, for some of the friends that I know. How many times when we think about this, I feel like we're so much more fortunate that we can Google and we can email and we can reach out to people much easily now. Mm-hmm. But for you at that point of time, figuring out, okay, I like this has been my experience in college doing this, I want to go and see how the world would interpret or what the world has for me in a sense. How did you go about finding these internships that would go and change your life in hindsight? And how did you know if you were making the right decision to commit your time there? I mean, again, right. From law to something else, of course, there's got to be like finding the best option if you're going to make a risk in changing things that you're doing. Right. So how were you sure in a sense?
Well, you use words like sure and best. And I don't know if that's the benchmark that we should be using. You can't know if it's the best ever, and you can't always be sure, but you can try. And the fact is, if it's not right, you can just zig and zag. I mean, the only thing in life that you have to be sure about, and that is completely unchangeable, is having a child. Everything else is changeable. I'm not recommending that
you can't give the child back, but everything else, But
I'm not recommending you go into marriage or serious endeavors or even a very serious job with the idea that you can just leave. But the idea that it has to be the best and you have to be sure, I don't think serves us. I think you go in, you try it on, and if it's not right, you do something else. You see what appeals to you about a situation, and you build on that. But best and right, I don't know. That doesn't feel like it will serve a student. you know.
Oh gosh, you're breaking my heart here and breaking the hearts of many very idealistic friends that I have on this topic. So what was the experience for you finding something that would lead you to the next thing in a sense at the very least?
I honestly don't recall how I found these internships. Part of it might have been through Penn or word of mouth. And also at the time, this wasn't a popular career choice. It was unconventional.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I had everybody said to me, "What are you doing? You know, like go to law school? What are you, crazy?" And I think I also mentioned when we first met, Harsha, that I come from a poor family, and I really wanted to build security for myself. That was really important to me, financial security, because I didn't have it as a child, and I really wanted that. And so that played into my thinking process as well. And look, I think it does with a lot of not just Penn students, a lot of young people. Like, how do I build a secure foundation? And I did like these early internships, and I did decide to kind of stick with the plan. And if it didn't work out for me in a couple of years, I could always go back to school. So again, it's not best. It's just, okay, I'm going to try this, and I'll see how it feels.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And I know that as you were I think after that you took a role at Telepictures, if I'm correct with pronouncing the name.
Yes. Yes.
You were director of development there. Tell us a bit about how you went about, number one, securing the role, and what was the experience like going into this industry right now, full time, like committing all your time there in this role in a sense. I think you're the director of development, if I recall right, in a sense.
Right. And I actually started with the company as in a position they called their intern, which was kind of a misnomer. It was a paid job. And that was really how I got my foot in the door. Weirdly, they had the CEO had gone to Harvard and placed an ad in the Harvard Crimson. And a friend of mine at Harvard saw the ad and told me about it. And that's how I got that job. And it was an unusual 2-year program, the first year in New York and the second in Los Angeles, where I'd never been. But I made the commitment. And of course, I ended up staying in Los Angeles, as you said, as director of development. And it was a great experience. And some of my dearest friends I met at that particular job. It's funny, we're all lifelong friends. And in fact, that same CEO is now a huge executive based out of Abu Dhabi, and he and I just Zoomed a couple of weeks ago. We're dear friends. And talk about finding your posse. These were just great people. And you'll find in your career, as you go from job to job, you will make key friendships here and there, but this was very unusual in that I made many, and we're all really close to this day. So it was an unusual situation. It was kind of a startup, so we were all in, all of us, and I think that bonded us to some extent, and the company was phenomenally successful. So it was right place, right time, a modicum of luck, and just some real hard work. And I do remember when I started working, I was really tired. I wasn't used to, getting up early, getting on the subway, going or walking to my office, trekking into Midtown. I was exhausted. And that was a real switch for me. And an older person said to me, "Oh yeah, you'll get used to that." And I think part of the backlash we're seeing now about going back to the office 5 days a week speaks to that. People realize how much energy and time it takes just to commute. And is there a return on that kind of significant human investment? So I do remember that. And I share that only because if any of your younger listeners experience that, it's normal.
Okay. I definitely know a few people who need to hear that, like specifically myself included at times. No, but that is amazing in a way. And your early role, I think you did so many things right from the get-go that was I could only imagine that most people would wish they they could experience from developing kind of the news and the different show formats to, I think, eventually in the next role you also develop and sold them to kind of like these studios and all of that.
Yeah.
In all of these things, in a way, you went from learn from number one in kind of at Penn, crafting the things themselves and these theater shows in a sense, to the TV and kind of film industry, which is a bit more of a different format. It's a lot more, or at least from what I've heard, it's not the same thing. You've got to relearn some of the basics in a sense. There's a different kind of rhythm to it in a way. For you, in a sense, how did you go about figuring out that rhythm, and was it as the easy of a switch as you expected, or what was kind of the most unexpected thing about the TV and film kind of format or industry that you had to learn from the get-go?
Well, first, being able to sell is really important. I think that's important in any job, really. And when I say sell, I don't necessarily mean it literally, although in my case it was important. I mean selling your ideas. Whether internally to your management, or in my case to television networks. Being able to express an idea in a very appealing way, succinctly, is a critical professional skill. I don't care what you do, it's a critical skill. So that was something I was able to tap into early on and learn from some very talented people. And I still really enjoy pitching ideas to this day. So I do it I'm very comfortable selling. I do it in a more conversational way. I try to bring the listener in on the process, so it's it's almost a conversation rather than a speech or a just
a word vomit of kind of.
Yeah, and I love it. I really enjoy it, and that was really important to learn. That was probably the best thing I learned early on.
Well, now I'm torn. Now I want to hear like your best versus your worst pitch in a sense, or share with us or pitch to our audience in a sense what will probably be the favorite project that you worked on, so that we can just take notes and scribble them down as you speak.
Oh, there are so many, and I've worked on unscripted television ideas, a lot of scripted stuff. I love pitching. And sometimes, especially with the scripted material, very often writers are expected to pitch their own material. And in my view, writers, more often than not, are really good expressing themselves, are better expressing themselves on the page than in the room. So I always had the benefit of saying to a writer, you know what, I'm happy to do this for you. You don't have to feel pressured to pitch it. I'll do it on your behalf. They were like, really? That would be great. So, that's a very helpful thing.
Okay. What was for me at the very least, whenever I do a presentation, which again is different from selling an idea or similar in some aspects of selling an idea, I always there have been presentations where I just look at everyone's face in the room and you're like, this is not going well, or like they're not getting the idea. Have you ever had those moments in a sense? And maybe tell us one or two of the stories of ideas that maybe you pitched and you didn't think, you know what, maybe they're not getting it, but it turned out well, or it turned out the other way around. Tell us one of your favorite pitching stories.
Yeah, that's a great question. Usually you can read a room.
Yeah.
I remember once being in a pitch. It was for a project starring Jessica Biel, of all things. And my boss at the time was pitching it, and I could tell it just wasn't, and he's a good pitcher too, but in this particular case, it just wasn't working. And he didn't read the room, and he just kept going and going and going and going. And I was at the end, I felt awful for him, because he's so good, and he knew he bombed out. And look, it happens to the best of us. But generally speaking, you can read the room. Now, what you can't read is what's going on behind the scenes. Oh, they already have enough comedies, Oh, they already have a pitch set in an advertising agency. Oh, they already have, they don't have any room on their schedule. You know, those are things we can't know. And like most things in life, you can't control it. But generally speaking, you can read the room.
All right. Makes sense. Makes sense. And I feel like we live in a very strange time now where everyone reads like the latest Netflix press release on we're looking for these kind of films to produce in this time, and everyone's got a lot more of an active voice of what they want.
Yes.
From your experiences of being in these positions of kind of like the middle ground between where ideas come in and where they're going to these big studios and all that, how do you feel the audience's voice, or what role do you think the audience's voice has in kind of what's being made out there? Because everyone knows, oh, it's supply and demand. If people like this is going to come out, but that's not always the case. Like when we actually watch things. So like, from your point of view, in that room, what goes on?
Well, it's true. I mean, networks now, they listen to the chatter. They follow Twitter. They want to know what their viewers are saying. Some much more than others. Yeah, no, that is absolutely true. And that is a difference. I mean, look, back when I was doing it, we got the overnights, as we said, the overnight ratings. Every morning we woke up to those and we knew how we did. Netflix doesn't reveal their ratings. It's different. It's a different world. And, from those of us who grew up in a much more traditional broadcast and cable environment, we've been sitting back wondering, how is this working? How is this company spending gazillion dollars on every project? And there are so many of them. They don't have ratings. We understand it's a subscription model, of course, but how is that sustainable? And now we're seeing maybe it's not. So it's a different world. It is. And yes, what the viewer thinks does matter. Absolutely. I mean, we used to call it water cooler conversation, which, as you may know, references ye old water cooler in the corner of the office where people would gather to get a glass of water, and they'd talk about what they watched the night before on the broadcast networks. And that exists, to some extent on social media. You've got to watch the latest Money Heist, or you've got to watch Stranger Things, or the new Gorgon, or whatever it is. That's the water cooler, and that matters.
All right. We'll keep an eye on the chatter then. I guess that's the indicator for what's happening next. You also specifically, I think you were VP of Miniseries at CBS. If I'm not, Miniseries are crazy right now. I feel like every show I watch only has 6 episodes, and it makes me awfully depressed. But I understand that there's probably a reason to it. I miss my 26 episode shows, but it's fine. But that's also a different crafting process in a sense than these larger films and all of that. From your experience working in the field that specifically, how do these miniseries differ from everything else? And honestly, how does someone pick whether their idea should be in one format or another? I mean, as a viewer, we're dumb. We don't know what are the creative decisions that go into this. Please enlighten us on why we have 3 Hobbit movies but only 6 episodes of show that I love. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, great question. Look, obviously a lot of it is financial, and if you have a hit, you want another hit, and no better way to do that than with a franchise, right? But it's interesting you said you missed your 26 episode series. Those are hard to come by now, but when they hit, they really hit big, and it's the gift that keeps on giving, right? And it can be, and more than you think as a viewer. How many times have you tuned into the second season of a limited series and thought, wow, this feels attenuated. I wish they didn't do this. So that happens too. I mean, I just tuned into a second series of an award-winning series, and my husband and I looked at each other. We're like, why couldn't they just leave it well enough alone? We didn't need this. So, look, it takes real experience. I recently curated a library of book titles where I said, okay, here are your limited series. These are the movies. And I think there may be a long-lived series in this particular book. So it depends is the answer on the characters, on the opportunities, on the situations. And then sometimes you can craft new situations that are not in the source material if you're basing something on source material. So it really differs. I myself love the limited series format because you can explore plot and character in a way you cannot in a film. So I'm very partial to it. I love tucking into a limited series. It's a great joy. I'm in the middle of one now, and I can't wait to get back to it tonight. I think we're going to finish it out tonight. So I think it's a great format.
Okay, now I've got to ask you, what are the top 3 recommendations of what to watch right now in a sense?
Right now.
Right now, or
really,
right now and 3 all time. Let's do that. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, right now we're watching, I mentioned the new season of the great Danish political thriller Borgen. We're watching Tehran on Apple TV, which is fabulously plotted. It's with Glenn Close this season. It's terrific. We also just finished the Winning season, which spoke to me personally. It's about the LA Lakers, the basketball empire, and it was so well done. We enjoyed it so much that we then watched the 4-part documentary on Magic Johnson. All fantastic. It was great to see the real people after watching the dramatization. That was a lot of fun. But boy, there's so much great content. Oh my goodness. I mean, they keep calling this the golden age, and in many ways it is. I mean, you throw money at the screen and you get some great stuff. So, gosh, I could go on and on about the great things we've watched. It's just, and now we're also watching Prehistoric Planet, also on Apple TV. Apple's really come up strong. Again, endless money. And that's just gorgeous to look at on a big screen. So it's just crazy. And I think everyone around the world experienced the glories of the golden age of streaming during the lockdown in particular. It was a gift to all of us.
Yeah, apologies on that. My camera just decided to swap and kill itself for a moment.
No,
but no, I agree. So I'll come back to kind of your 3 all-time favorites in a second. But one of the things that I like when you were giving those recommendations was you said something like, this series is really, really kind of well plotted. And I think that's something that we credit to writers, especially on coming up with literal masterpieces that are not only concise as a story that runs throughout episodes, that runs throughout the series, but also leave each episode as biting and gripping as possible, that makes you want to tune in for the next. So however they do it is amazing. So I know that you actually spent some time as a screenwriter. I think you worked on a bunch of different projects in a way that from rom-coms to, I think, screenplays, and you're part of the Writers Guild of America, at a point of time. Tell us a little bit about how the screen, or what are the things we don't see that goes into kind of the screenwriting process?
Oh boy. Well, what you don't see is a wall full of Post-its.
Okay.
Where that's how things are plotted. You don't see that. It's literally where you're moving things around, and you don't see the character arcs and descriptions for each character and where you want that character to begin and go to. This is the heavy lifting of screenwriting. It's not actually sitting down and writing dialogue. It's laying the foundation for the story. And I think it's incredibly difficult. And that's where the real talent comes in. It's not so much crafting the words as it is crafting the story.
We often talk about writer's block when it comes to novelists and people who write books, in a sense. What does writer's block look like for screenwriters, and how have you ever faced it? What did you do then, in a way?
Yeah, I was never employed steadily as a writer, so That's a tough question for me. But sure, everybody, I think most writers face it at one time or another, and they've got to power through it. It's very hard. It's, writing is hard. And writing, it's the classic line, writing is rewriting. You're just constantly revising. And then very often writers get replaced on projects, and that's heartbreaking and hard to take. You just got to keep going. It's like, in a way, it's like being an actor. It's a lot of rejection, and then when you hit, it can be fantastic. But it's very hard work. Very hard work. I bow my feet. Whatever. I have great respect for writers, of course.
You were also a literary agent, I think, for a while, who kind of helped facilitate bringing those screenplays and all to light in kind of contacting the right studios and the right people. Tell us a little bit about what like that's a very interesting role to be in, because you have all of these hopes and dreams that you literally carry in a sense, in a way. Tell us a little bit about what goes into coming up with an idea and actually seeing it on screen, in a sense, from the point of view of going out there and selling it to a production company.
Well, agents don't necessarily come up with the idea. Agents are the glue that connects the idea maker, i.e. the writer or the show creator, to the buyer. And they help the writer sometimes with the pitch and with crafting a project that can sell. So they can add elements to it. In other words, they can say, this would be a great actor to attach to this project. Let's see if we can make that happen. Or I have this book. Writer, would you want to adapt this? I have this actress who wants to, produce it and star in it. Would you be interested? So that's what we call packaging a project. And so agents do a lot of that. And agents have become a lot more powerful, and then less so through the years. And it's also a job. You can be an agent and build your own business for decades. So it can be a very stable position within a fluctuating industry.
Okay, cool. So in a way, you've kind of seen it all, in a sense, from the writer's room to that intermediary place to actually at the production houses, in a sense. What has been in all of these different stages and all of these different roles, what has been the toughest role that you've had so far?
The toughest role was managing a very difficult boss.
Ooh, that's a good answer. Elaborate. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, it was my favorite job. It was when I was at CBS, but I had a very difficult boss who he was under tremendous pressure, which he spread amongst all the people who reported to him. We knew when he was in a bad mood. We all said, stay away. I mean, we spent a lot of energy managing him. And as talented as he was, and he was extraordinary, that was the hardest thing I've done. It hurt my soul at times. And he finally, there was a reckoning. But that was the most difficult part.
That is very fascinating, because again, the industry itself is something that, at least now I've heard, it has a huge amount of pressure on it. It works like clockwork at times, and everyone's got to play their parts to see that output. And if not, you've got 100 angry fans at your door complaining about every kind of misstep in the way. How do you balance all of that pressure in this career, in a sense, and still be the amazing, fun, and phenomenal person you are today without cracking under that pressure?
People have different coping skills. You've got to stay rooted in not just yourself and belief in yourself, but also in the people who really care for you, whether it's family, certainly friends, colleagues. I have had fantastic colleagues, men and women who've just been super supportive and remain dear friends. And I always had a rich life outside of work. I always exercised and took care of myself, always. I always did extracurricular organizational work where I was giving back to something or someone, and that helped keep me grounded. I always tried to maintain, I wouldn't exactly say it was a balance because it's hard to balance. You're spending a lot more time at work than you were at anything else. But I always had outside interests, and as I moved from job to job, those would remain, my friends would remain. I always felt kind of rooted. I also always enjoyed a rich home life and a beautiful home. And so those things really matter. You know, pinning all your hopes and dreams and your self-worth on your work is too precarious. I wouldn't recommend it for anyone. And there are too many things outside of your control, and eventually you'll get, you know, your ass handed back to you in some way. So that's dangerous. You want to try to stay a little balanced and remember that you have people who really care for you outside of your professional trajectory.
No, beautifully said. And it's especially like I feel right now as we kind of exit the pandemic, everyone has had this whiplash of confusion in a sense of we had time at home which was extremely stressful, and then now we're back at the office and we thought it'd get a bit better, but it's not necessarily the way. There's no going back to exact normal now that we've had a taste of something different, and then
Yeah.
we're all balancing that a little bit. You mentioned a few things that was very nice in that answer. That number one, it's about having friends, family that you can turn to in a sense that is really important. And I just wanted to spend a bit of time on that because you also connected it, or at least earlier you mentioned that a lot of the people you met and you worked with have actually become great lifelong friends in a way. How do you go about building and, more importantly, maintaining those relationships with those important to you? Because again, fast-paced industry,
Yeah.
it's easy to get caught up in a sense. How do you build and cultivate those relationships so that it's not always about the work, but even from there you convert kind of the people from your work to important people in your life?
Well, you have to do it mindfully. You know, you have to put some energy into it, and checking. You know, you have to check in and not just say, "Oh, I need to talk to Scott." You actually say, "Okay, I'm going to call right now," or I'll send a meaningful text. Just say. People want to hear, "I'm thinking of you." They want to hear that they're thought of. So just that simple act is a connecting point. And I think during the lockdown, we all saw who mattered to us and who was, I don't want to use the word dispensable, but just who wasn't giving back to us in the same way. Those people kind of went by the wayside almost out of necessity. So it's investing in the relationships that matter. And it's not a huge investment. And it's always okay to say, "I'm sorry I haven't been in touch. You've been on my mind." And when somebody is on your mind, just put it out into the world. Don't hold it in. Just quickly pick up your device and say, "Hey, you know, that's it." It's pretty simple. And I also have gotten, as I've gotten older, and this is the gift of age, I'm much more attuned to relationships that are reciprocal. And I tend to invest in those a lot more than the ones that tended to be more one-sided.
No, I guess all of us also, I think, like we fail in either one of those aspects of having that relationship where many times, especially when you said if someone's on your mind, just reach out and text them. I feel like sometimes that simple thing we often fail to do it.
Absolutely. It's really simple. I mean, and because I like writing, I used to send a lot of written notes, like in snail mail. And every Monday I would go into the office and think, okay, what did I do over the weekend that was really fun? and I would scribble a note. I used to keep postcards and stamps, all old school, and people would always say, "Oh my gosh, I loved getting something in the mail from you. That was crazy." So it's just a little tip. Like every Monday, I'd set aside like 15 minutes and just jot out some notes to people I'd spent time with over the weekend, and that also is helpful. And to this day, I know a lot of people do this, but I'm always sending photos to people. Like when we're together, I take a photo. I make sure when I thank them electronically now, I include a photo. So, those little things matter.
And I like receiving mail. I think maybe I should do that for some of my team members. Like just be like the next time I see them, like, here's the letter. They'll lose their mind. So just like mail them a letter. But no, that is really, really like that's a really good idea. And also I think again it's just about being mindful about those relationships and sending that photo, taking that extra step in a sense beyond just surface level connections. Well, the other thing that you mentioned that I also thought was very fascinating was giving back and carving out that time to give back. You give back a lot to the Penn community at the very least, and I'm sure much more than it's beyond Googleable comprehension. Like I saw that there's actually a writing scholarship by the Kelly's Writers House in your name. Thank you for all of the writers out there. I know you're on the board of, I think, some of the alumni kind of associations, especially Bloomers and a couple of other comedy groups. Why is giving it back important in a sense? I mean, you're amazing. You're successful, very, very wise in the industry. We're dumb, boring kids. Why help us?
Second, because it roots you in the world.
Mm-hmm.
They're really in giving, you get so much more back. I know that sounds cliche, but it really is true. You get perspective, if nothing else, and you probably get a lot more than that. It builds your heart. It will make you. It will give you empathy. It will give you. It will sharpen your values. It's so important, particularly as America goes through massive changes and feels particularly polarized. It's all the more important. And I think that should be a main. I wish we had a public service requirement in this country, whether it was during a gap year, or I think everything would be better if we had that. But we don't, and we won't. So giving back is really important. I almost think it's part of being it's almost like a passport to your human citizenship. Like that's you kind of owe that to the world. That's my view. So I think it's critical.
No, I agree wholeheartedly. Just the other day, I was waiting in line at like a McDonald's and something like that. They had one of these machines, the one that brings the food up and down. It was broken, so they just tied a cardboard box by a string and threw it down in a sense in the hole. And I was just thinking, what a stressful job this is in a sense. And I thought the world would be so much more of a better place if every single human had to do like a 30 minutes front-facing customer job. Like in their week in a sense. Like if I worked at the McDonald's for 30 minutes a week, I'd be a much nicer person to like everyone that I meet in a sense. And I can only assume that's the same for everyone. So maybe we've got to make that happen. Maybe we've got to talk to some policy writers in a sense and at least have that community service element because definitely food for thought. I also just wanted to talk a little bit about the work you're doing right now. You're in more of an advisory role right now. You consult to a lot of the decision makers in the field in this industry. What do you think, like from your and you've seen it all in a way. You've seen from cable to Netflix and its rise and fall right now, or rise and plateau right now. What do you think is something that these producers, these CEOs of these companies need to know and all of that, and from the experiences that you're providing and bringing to them?
Well, I think they're pretty smart, so I don't know if they need to know anything from me, but I think, just generally speaking, when something looks too good to be true, it probably is. And it's just, again, the sustainability of their business plan is questionable. What do they need to know from me? I don't know. They're pretty good at evaluating material too. That's why they've gotten to where they are. So that's what I do. But I would just say, trying to maintain excellence is hard in any industry. They're really trying. And it's not only about money, although money's really helpful. It's just about identifying talent. And that can be hard to do.
Okay. So for all of the talent here watching today's show who are like, I want to get into this industry, I want to be like you in a sense, who are very uncertain of where they should hit in a sense, what do you think makes talent exceptional, makes them recognizable, whether they're and not necessarily for the actors and the YouTubers looking to get noticed, but for the screenwriters, for the wannabe directors in a sense, what do they have to do to be the people that the industry needs right now?
Well, I would say have a really distinctive point of view or voice. Be different. Be distinctive. Don't blend in. Offer something different and new. Something that is uniquely yours. I think that's critical. It seems that content now is taking us into worlds we don't know, worlds that are new and different and things we couldn't have imagined. Give us that. Explore that part of yourself. That's how you tell your stories is unlike any way we've seen. That's what's in demand. So I would say that, and I would also say that I've yet to meet a Penn student who wanted to be in the entertainment industry who hasn't been able to make that leap. Yeah, Penn students are remarkable, and then they've had an incredible success story in entertainment. So join that and take heart in that fact that you too are part of that community and you can make your mark here.
All right, amazing. Thank you so much for being on this show. You are obviously one of those people who I could talk to for hours and still have hundreds of questions that would hopefully solve all of my life issues, because you're just extremely wise and experienced. So I really appreciate you taking the time on this show. And I only hope that the last hour has been as meaningful for you as it's been for me and our viewers. So thank you once again for joining us.
And Harsha, I would say to you personally, go for it. You are really good at what you do, and you're as good as anyone I've ever met. So I look forward to watching your star soar.
Well, it's very kind. And with that, I've got to send my love once more to you, especially for waking up at 7 a.m. to still be here and still compliment me on stuff. So appreciate really all the effort and love. And thank you once again for not just being on the show, but for all of the attention and kindness that you shower the community at Penn with. So we really appreciate it. And to our audience at Penn, make sure you guys do justice to our alumni and use the resources that you have around us, that you guys take the lessons from today's session and go out there and find a way to make your mark on the industry as well. And with that, thank you everyone for joining us on today's episode of Changing Reality. If you like today's show, make sure to tune in again next Thursday at 10 p.m. as always. And with that, let's sign off. Bye.
You're listening to Changing Reality. Changing Reality, where we bend reality all across the world. Only on WQHS Radio.